Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Today we have some very special guests from Miami Palmetto High School. We have the top echelon of the debate team. Welcome to all of you. To my right, we have Winston and Cheyenne. You both are co-presidents of the debate club. We have Vedant, who is vice president, and Susan, who is the secretary. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you.
It's really an amazing thing when I look to the leaders of tomorrow, how bright and articulate you are. My question, we'll start with Winston. Why did you join a debate team?
So I've been doing debate for pretty much my entire time since middle school. I joined a debate program at my middle school in 6th grade, back at the Weiss School in Palm Beach County. And it really just made me a better speaker. It made me more confident in myself. And it was something that I thought was really important. So when I moved here in 10th grade, I immediately saw that they had a similar program at Palmetto, and I joined it.
So were you debating with your parents when you were a toddler?
I don't know about toddler, but it started pretty early.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah. Sorry.
What about you? Why did you join?
Well, I had a similar situation. Like, my parents would have family dinners, and I would just be that person that, from a young age, I would stand up on a chair and just start arguing with people, not in a respectful way, but it made me interested in the art of discussion. And I joined debate sophomore year, and I watched it grow to what it is today, and it's very great. It made me confident in what I do, talking to people, my ability to articulate things that a lot of people struggle with. I think the ability to reason and to persuade, but also to come to a common ground, is so valuable, especially in today's society where everything's very
And you're a
decisive.
senior.
Yes.
So, and you can be graduating in a few months.
Yes.
So what happens come the fall?
Well, hopefully I can go to a good college and go on a pre-law track is what I'm hoping for, but I hope to experiment into a lot of different areas.
That's terrific. And Vedant. Okay, so why did you join the Palmetto High School debate team?
Well, so I mean, I started debating freshman year. I was in a completely different state, right? I mean, I just was inspired by my sister. She did debate, and she was like, "You should do it too." I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And it really just changed my life, because it's like the ability to like talk to people like openly, like to be able to address a crowd, like all this stuff, like this is pretty important. So then when I moved to Miami and I came to Palmetto, I was like, "There's a debate here. Of course, I'm gonna do it." Because I mean, I've heard about like there's like a New York Times article, right? I've heard about the debate at Palmetto, so I was like, I'll do it. And yeah.
Okay, and Susan.
So my mom was a defense attorney growing up, so like that kind of arguing was something I always loved at the dinner table with my family. But this past summer I did this program called Girl State. You know what that is?
No.
It's this program where like the best 300 students, the best that are girls, in their the summer of their junior year, they spend a week in FSU and 3 days in the chambers of Congress and in government. It's pretty much mock government. So you learn how politics works, how government works. You have mock elections, you have primary general elections. And from there, my love for speech and debate really grew, and my love for politics really grew.
And we frequently hear the term "to argue your point." Some people think that you're angry when you're doing it, but that's the discussion part. You argue your point. So when you were growing up and when your mom had that experience of being in court, there's a certain protocol that has to be there, and so it is when you're on the debate team.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us what that was like when you're arguing your point, but you really know your heart might be on the other side, but your assignment for today might have been to argue a point that you don't like. What's that like?
Well, I think that at the base of everything, you need to be impartial, and you need to realize that any type of argument is you need to reach a common goal, and that's making the other person understand something. And I think that if you can, there's so many perspectives that you can view an issue on, and at its basic core, there's so many ways that you can perceive a topic as correct in some way. If you hold a certain amount of values, you kind of just tweak it a little bit. And if you decide, okay, well, this is what I like about this, you know, and maybe this is a reason enough to like it. And my purpose here today is to just convince these people to believe the same way that I am. It doesn't really have anything to do with your values, but more so to look at things logically and realize that fundamentally, this is why this is correct, and fundamentally, this is why this is wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with morals, but the basis is you're just trying to convey something.
Yeah. And Winston, you said it's improved your life.
Yeah.
How so?
I think that as a person, it made me a better communicator. I think it made it easier for me to get ideas across. I think it also made me able to connect with people better, people who might have different perspectives. When you do debate, as she was saying, a thing that you have to do a lot is you kind of have to take a step back and look at something from a broader perspective and a more impartial one. And I think that also helps you connect with people that you might not normally think you have a lot in common with, but I think we all have a lot in common, and that helps you understand that.
When there's an actual debate, there's a team on the other side, and they each present their side. So being open and transparent. What's it like when you have argued your best and you think that you did a great job and you think you should get the points, and the decider says, no, it goes to the other team. What's that like for you inside?
I mean, it happens.
And at that point, everybody's smiling.
It happens way more than I'd like for that to happen. But sometimes it's just like the way you speak your points, that matters a lot.
The way you, I'm sorry?
The way you speak your points, like the way you articulate your points, that sometimes can matter to the judge more than the content of your points.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things with debate. You have to learn how to speak clearly and get your ideas across. It sometimes can matter more than the content. As long as you're getting your ideas across best, that's how you can really get the judge to be on your favor if they can completely understand what you're saying.
And Susan, sometimes we do things that are very distracting to the decider on the other side. You know, scratch your head, rub your nose, or whatever it is. So what are some of the things that you think you do that might draw away from the point that you're trying to make?
That's a good question. I think I might throw this one at Winston and see what his response is.
Way to go, baby. So what are some of the things that you might be doing that'll distract the judge from looking at your content rather than what you are doing?
So I think when I present, a lot of times, especially in the later speeches of a debate, you end up having to reference specific things that you've brought up earlier on. And a lot of times I'll just be searching through my laptop trying to find it. There'll be 5 or 10 seconds of sort of this awkward silence as I try to find it desperately. And I think that can sometimes, in a judge's mind, detract from the point I'm trying to make, because interrupting my own presentation sort of makes my speaking seem worse and my points kind of harder to communicate, even if in the end I am referencing back to that earlier information.
We see it on TV all the time where the judge says, why the attorney's doing it, says, Mr. Winston, and we see that. And then the judge or the deciders are going, maybe they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Cheyenne, tell us about with you on the things that you think you are doing that are really helping you besides arguing your point. Are there certain things that you can do?
I think that part of the value of debate and also speech, we also, I've recently dabbled a lot in speech and expression and dramatic interpretation specifically, and I think that the value of it is knowing how to connect with people also on an emotional level, because a lot of times when you go to these competitions, especially local ones, you will have volunteer judges, you'll have parents who go up, and an emotional appeal works a lot more effectively on them. And I think that understanding human emotions is a huge part of this entire skill set. It's understanding how to work your words, how to understand how to work the spacing and the timing and the facial expressions and the way you express yourself. It's so important because it also delves into so many other aspects of your life. It's interpersonal relationships. It's a lot of things.
So even if your position is clear and it's perfectly presented, if the judge looks at you and says, He's so stiff, all right? He's so uncomfortable doing this, all right? He doesn't look right. They're all laughing, right? He's very nervous, all right? And he's saying the words, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting it. Do they say that about you?
I mean, sometimes. Basically, my biggest issue is a lot of times, like, I stutter, right? I get, like, there's so many, like, in the type of debate that we do, there's just so many facts you have to get into. And having it all listed down in, like, your limited amount of time to get your thoughts in order is that, like, by jumping from like point to point, it really like my thoughts get jumbled in a mess sometimes, right? So just like that's the thing that like I can have the best points, but the best thing like for me to work on is just to get my ideas like more clear, right? Because my voice, get it all out just in one go.
And Susan, when you're delivering a message, can you sometimes sense the judge, what they're thinking and what they're feeling?
Yeah, sometimes you do get that, maybe from a glare they send you, or yeah.
So have you switched stream in the middle and go, listen, I think I struck a chord with him. I think I need to be a little bit more emotional about this rather than 1 and 1 is 2, come up with something new?
Yeah, sometimes in debate competitions, what really wins you that competition, what gives you that edge over your competitors is being emotional and is having that specific articulation in what you're saying.
If you look it up and say, how do people make decisions? The emotional one is a huge part of that. There's an old saying, the facts don't matter, right? So often. And we see that in sometimes the wildest cases that are out there. But when people are emotionally involved, they're a little bit more open. So what is it that you like a lot about being on the debate team?
Meeting people who are driven to become better speakers, better arguers. I think it takes a certain type of person to love speech and debate. It's people who genuinely enjoy the process, and they're always so fun to talk to because it's like they all have these opinions and they're so well articulated, and it's exciting because it's like you walk into this room and there's so many people with such well-developed opinions on things, and you can always have an educated and mature conversation with them.
So, Vedant, how do you continue a conversation out of a competition with somebody, and it develops into this debate style personal conversation? How do you do it so you're not hurting the other person and you're allowing them to speak and being able to share, talking time?
Like with someone I debated against?
No, let's say it's not. But you go out and the debate, is in your head. You go, oh, I know what to do here. I'm just going to give it to them.
So yeah, sometimes my parents are like, our house is not a debate. You gotta let it go sometimes. And because I have to think it's a completely different mindset, but when you're debating, right? Because you have to be understanding all your opponent's points, just like layering into them. And sometimes it can be like a little bit tough transition, but once you transition, it just makes you more open-minded, really, and just you have to consider it just makes you a better listener, really, debate as an activity, because you're able to understand really every point that person is making. Even in a normal conversation, it's easier for you to comprehend what they're talking about and all the stuff like that.
Winston, your folks ever say, this is not a debate and it's not a democracy. Your mother and I are in charge and this is what you're going to do. Does that sound familiar?
Something like that.
Yeah. Look at us like, well, don't give me that debate stuff. This is what we're doing. All right. So let's talk about your plans. We're going to start over here with Winston. In the next couple of years, where do you want to be?
Well, I'm going to be in college, hopefully. And
fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I really want to study economics in college. And people might have a hard time understanding the connection between that and an activity like speech and debate. But I think it's really important, because when you want to work in finance, business, industries like that, the most important thing underlying all the numbers and all the different dealings are your relationships with the people that you're going to work with, and your ability to kind of network and your ability to connect with the person that you're making a deal with. Because if someone can't trust you on a fundamental interpersonal level, they can't trust the way that you're treating them in a business deal. So I think being able to develop that confidence and that ability to build those connections and perspective from an activity like this is, for me, really important in getting me to the place I want to be.
And Cheyenne, Winston mentioned about confidence and about trust. So often we're speaking with somebody and we sort of get lost.
Yeah.
And then you got to grab and figure out where you are. And at that point, the listener is going, what's wrong with them? I don't have as much confidence now in them that I did before.
Yeah.
So when you recognize that about yourself, you're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
You go, this is really going sour. You got about 3 seconds, and I don't know where I'm at. What do you do to try to recover?
Well, that happens to me a lot. But usually I try to just take a moment, because I like to talk really fast sometimes, and I forget to pause. So I kind of just try to be conscious of that, pause, and let myself think, and then bridge it back to something. Like, I like to think of myself as good at transitioning things very well. So to find a connection really quickly, just like on the tip of my toes, and bring it back. But
and so often in pausing, all right, it gives us a chance to like take a deep breath, and they know that you're pausing. And a lot of that is because you're thinking about the correct thing to say. In some cases, you're just trying to sort out your mind.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were stuttering. When we start to stutter and people are watching us and listening, what's wrong? And they get caught up in the act of the not being clear, but it does permeate back. Maybe they don't know what they're doing.
yeah.
So how do you recover from that?
I think this is the best way to recover from it. It's just like in debate, one of the things you have to learn in debate is that you have to never admit that you're wrong, right? So one of the things you have to do in debate is that you just have to move on past that, right? Like, just don't, if you, like, the more you think about it, like, the more you get caught up with it, like, the more you're gonna stutter, or the more, like, your speaking is gonna fail. But if you just try to, like, move on as fast as possible, then it just becomes, like, a smaller part of your speech, and then you can move on to, like, the main points of debate.
And we see that in football plays and basketball plays. Oh, okay, next play. They don't wait around and have a pity party there. So, Susan, so again, when you're out there and you're doing a debate and the other team's there, do you have an audience, by the way? When you
Sometimes.
Kind of.
Not usually.
Not usually.
I think I've done one debate where I had an audience, but it was kind of like an informal type.
It's
It's spectators.
why don't you explain the setup on a debate?
Well, first it depends on the kind of debate you're doing. I've done congressional debate, which is like 20 people to a room in a classroom, and it's just all the competitors set up. You have the presiding officer, which it mimics like real life Congress, and you have the presiding officer somewhere like towards the front with their gavel, and then you have everybody who's competing, who's the presiding officer is also competing, and then you have everybody else just like sitting in the chairs, usually facing each other. And there's like an aisle in between the sets of desks, so everybody can, like, when they're giving their speeches on what bills they want to pass and whatever, they can walk around and they can really like give a performance.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because in order to give your performance, whether you're sitting there walking around, you have to have certain things in your body that's going on. So what are some of the things that you should be careful of yourself to make sure you have the best presentation?
I think part of it that a lot of people miss is that eye contact should really be varied when you're talking to like a larger group of people. It shouldn't just be you look off in the general direction of where people are. You should be kind of looking at one person, looking at a different person. And I think that kind of makes it more effective, because sometimes people will feel like you're speaking directly to them. Mm-hmm. And part of it is also being really intentional with your kind of movements. Part of that, for me, the biggest part of that is hand gestures. I think that like effective use of hand gesturing is really important to kind of conveying a point properly.
So we see on TV all the time where actors or sometimes politicians, they point,
Yeah.
they'll be talking like that, or they smile, or they'll turn around and they'll see that. And that's correct, because once that contact is made, they're talking to me, all right? Even though they might not be, but that's part of the plan to do that. We see frequently where you're able to turn around and, go to the audience. But we understand you got to catch the eye of somebody, all right? And you got to deliberately go ahead and do that. Where do you learn to do those things?
So I mean, with debate, like a lot of you just like learn through experience, right? I mean, there are like resources, like our coach has been great, and like past coaches I've had have been great too. But a lot of these things, like you just learn by doing them, right? You can learn from like just the entire part of the activity, right? You can learn from like your opponents, if your opponents are doing that and it works out well. And just like throughout the round, like your judge like at the end of the round, the judge gives you feedback, and like that also can teach you. Like I think just like debate, like basically all parts of the activity are like a teaching experience, really, because you can like learn a lot from just any part of it. So
let's say you're moving along, Susan, and you go, man, I think we got this thing, all right? And you're feeling good because the other side is sort of flailing, and you're very confident. I think we're delivering the message really good. And it turns out, no, you got struck out. What's that like when you feel so good that you got it, and then all of a sudden you realize that you didn't? Is the word win? What's the word?
Win.
Yeah.
Win.
And you go, we did our best. How come it came out like that? What's going on in your head when that happens?
During the competition or after?
Yes.
Just yes to both.
Yes.
I would say during the competition and after, you get like a little stomach drop, but during the competition, you're like whatever. You're just like standing your ground and you just plant your feet even harder and draw your line in the sand.
So we recognize when there are trials that are going on, sometimes the facts don't matter. They like you. Sometimes we always give a little break in there, say, yes, this one's got over here, there's some good points, and some over there are good points. In a debate, there's a group of you that are debating the subject on both sides, or is it just one?
Depends on the kind.
It depends. So usually you prepare for both sides. And then it's either like
It's just a coin flip.
Coin flip,
if you
yeah.
both side, you get.
But is there teams against each other, or is it one-on-one?
It depends on the format.
Yeah.
Him and I are debate partners, so the one we do is 2 versus 2, but there's also 1v1 formats.
And when do you on the subject? If there's a subject, if there are 2 subjects, do the 2 of you discuss the subject and say who's going to take which subject?
It's just a coin flip beforehand on which team gets like what side, or basically you get to pick between, do you want to go first or like what side you want to get.
So but 2 people could be arguing the point for your team. But when you're arguing, do you plan ahead of time how you're going to have your presentation?
Right. So it really depends on format. So in our format, there's like 4 speeches that each side does. So like there's a set speaker. So he's the first speaker for our team, and I'm the second speaker. So like our first speech is completely pre-prepared, and then after that, like they're basically as it goes on, it gets less and less pre-prepared because like you're more evidence being introduced, and you don't have like prepared stuff against it. So it's
On your opening statement,
yeah.
do you read that or you just know it at that point?
I read it. After a couple different rounds, usually there's some parts where you can kind of look up and you know what the rest of that sentence says, but generally you're not going to be memorizing those things. I think in speech events, a lot of times you do memorize, but with debate, you have to be careful about quoting your evidence because otherwise they can say you misrepresented it. So you have to be making sure that you're saying exactly what it says on that paper or that laptop.
So when you're having discussions with your friends and they say, oh, this happened, some event over there, do you say to yourself, what evidence is there to support that? Do you think that? Do you say it?
Sometimes I say it, but I think it a lot.
So at what point do you decide to, not to challenge them, but say, well, I know you think that the earth is flat, but what's the evidence of that? Do you ask people? Not in a debate format.
Yeah, I think it definitely changed the way I see just common arguments. But I think that there's also like an understanding that like there's some people who just don't really care, And I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but there's so much that you can really do. I think that it definitely helps when you can base things kind of loosely around like the structure, because I think like if it doesn't seem like you're trying to be pretentious, like, oh, like what's your evidence or what's your contention here or whatever, like if you kind of base it loosely around, sometimes you just naturally can pave a way into like them realizing that like, oh, maybe she is right, but I don't think that I invalidate points or anything, because there has to be like a lot of understanding in that.
So has it made you a better person, Vedant?
Debate, for sure. Like it's in all sorts of ways. I mean, like one thing is that like you always have. It definitely makes you have a more open mind, right? Because you have to, on every issue, you have to be able to argue both sides like well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's an issue that like you should feel one, like I feel one side about this issue, but I don't have a choice. I have to learn how to argue both sides of that issue. So if I want to do well in debate. So I mean, that's one way it makes me a better person. But another way, just like it just makes you like more receiving to all sorts of different arguments, right? Because you have to. It's like not just open on like what side, but just like in general, like all these like different like angles that people come from. That you always like have to be aware of all these other perspectives, because you have to be able to defend or attack them. So
Yeah.
it just like makes you aware of all these
Okay,
different
we
stuff.
got a couple minutes left. And Susan, we're going to start with you. I'm sure you've had people that have encouraged you, that are mentors, people that you look up to. I'd like you to think about somebody. You got them in mind? You know who it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do is look straight into the red camera and talk to them right now.
Oh my god.
Got 1 minute.
Okay. Can it be one person or multiple
Yes,
people?
one is fine.
Okay, so this is for Representative Allison Tant. Thank you for giving me the confidence to really pursue what I wanted to pursue and pursue a possible career in politics.
Wonderful. And the same to you. So any person that's really made a difference in your life and appropriate, thank them. And if they're not with us anymore, it's okay. We'll mention them by name.
Okay, I'm just gonna thank my sister Trisha Sharan. She's really been like my inspiration for debate and all this like sort of school related stuff. I mean, she's the one that like I was like, you do debate. Like she's my older sister, so I was like, okay, whatever, I'll listen to you. And that was like a great like decision. She always like has like great advice for me, such as like joining debate. So I just want to thank her.
Wonderful. Cheyenne?
Okay, well, I have two people in mind, but I think I want to thank my mom. She was a lawyer practicing for like 15 years, and she taught me how to have a conversation in a respectful manner. And I think that it taught me a lot about how to structure the way I think, you know, and it made me a better person because it made my life structured. But yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's one other one. You want to say it?
Oh, and to my brother for not having silly arguments. He never let his emotions control him too much, but he was the type of person that I could talk to for about anything, educational or not, and have a respectful conversation. And you don't really find that in a lot of siblings. So I thank him a lot for that.
You're on, Winston.
I'm gonna thank my dad. He was a debater himself in high school, and as a kid, I kind of adapted to his kind of passion for, you know, world events and politics, and he sort of inspired me to go in the direction I did with speech and debate, and he's just generally been an inspiration for me for how I want to live my life.
Wonderful.
Before we wrap
Can I
up,
redo
though,
mine?
I want to thank one more person. I want to thank our debate coach, Miss Shapiro.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Without her, none of this
Thank
would have been
you.
possible.
Yeah.
Like she's the one. Like without her, we wouldn't have been able to compete this year. And she just
Yeah.
like is making all this possible. And she's like working really hard.
Yeah,
So
it was
I
such a
don't think-
huge turnaround. Like we
Yeah.
started basically from nothing last year. We
Yeah.
didn't compete. We had, I think it was really just us board members at the end of the year. It was just us. There was really not much competition for the roles we have now. So we saw it at the bottom, and now it's where it is now, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, we're hosting our first tournament in 15 years.
Yeah.
Coming up in February.
And we won our first competition in 6 years because we didn't do anything.
Congratulations, all of you. We're going to look
Thank
over the
you.
red camera. Folks, this is the future of America right here. Congratulations to them. It is secure. Again, thank you for joining us. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Have a good day. Bye now.
Bye.